Welcome to the Black Duck Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Wilkins. I'm excited to have you join me as I speak with a fascinating collection of folks, all of whom have in common that they've made a way for themselves by finding an intersection between thoughtful consideration and the tactile work of getting their hands dirty. This is an examination of intention, capability, and craft. It's where philosophy meets the blue-collar work ethic and where I find real value. Hey folks, welcome back to the Black Duck Revival Podcast. This week, my guest will be Alex Harvey, a forester and landowner advocate from coastal Mississippi. This brother was a joy to talk to. He's a wealth of information about the history of black hunters and land ownership in these southern United States. As a matter of fact, so much so that we bounced around and talked about quite a few topics and went down quite a few different rabbit holes. But I'm all right with that. I enjoy the fact that we had so much to talk about, and I'm looking forward to having him back on at a future time to continue some of these conversations that we initiated on this episode. I'm actually in a hotel in Sacramento, California, on my way to the airport to get back to Arkansas and finish out my waterfowl season. So I'm going to pack up and get on the road and leave you to enjoy this episode of the podcast with Alex Harvey. Thanks so much. We're sitting here at the big church table here at Black Duck Revival, a table made by my good friend Michael Dillon. It was formerly a apple cider vinegar vat from Northwest Arkansas. We're sitting on the old church pews, back from when this was the Heartline Christian Fellowship Church. And I'm joined by Alex Harvey. Alex and his brother Al stopped by for a few hours, have some gumbo and chat on their way to Nebraska for a mule deer hunt. Alex is a forester from Mississippi. He's a landowner advocate, biologist, conservationist, host of other things, but I think he just most aptly described himself to me as an advocate for landowners. We'll talk some about how that plays out in his professional life, and then some of his passion projects as well, specifically dealing with heirs land. But yeah, Alex and I have kind of been internet friends for a couple of years. I think we did a Zoom panel or something maybe right when COVID started, and just kind of stayed in touch. I guess he's a board member of HOC Hunters of Color, founded by my friends Lydia and Jimmy up in Oregon, who will be down here shortly to do some speckled-belly goose hunting. But Alex, man, thanks for coming by. I'm excited that we finally got to meet in person.
Yeah, man. Same here, brother. It's been, I wanted to get here and to make your acquaintance and, to sit in the church and to worship in terms of, conversation, right? About everything you do and I do, and how we both look to make an impact, right, with all of that. So, yep,
definitely, man. I'll be honest with you, man. You're the first black forester I've ever met. And then in our conversations, I've come to find out that there's actually a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's just like kind of a hole in my knowledge and experience. Mm-hmm. But, man, this is kind of a big question, but, give me a somewhat succinct kind of version of what you're doing now, how you got to there. Well, we've talked a lot about like familial histories, these generations of black relationship with the land in the South. And you're very much coming out of that kind of continuum. And I think it's definitely led you to what you're doing now and your ideas about things. So, just talk about that a little bit.
So Yeah, I guess where to begin that conversation is now I'm currently a consulting forester, wildlife biologist, and I got into this kind of fortuitously. I have to first start by saying my brother and I, we grew up, on a farm and cattle ranch in central Mississippi. And between Hinds County, which is where the state's capital is located, and Holmes County, which is where our parents went as student teachers in the late 60s and never left. And so, we kind of grew up between both of those places. And, we've always had a very close relationship with land itself. And, it sort of always has been the backdrop for life as I know it, right? And, I decided that I wanted to get a degree. I think I was like ninth or 10th grade. My parents started asking, what do you want to do the rest of your life? And I decided that I wanted to be one of those guys that quote unquote rode around the green trucks, right? And that was the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And so um, I had no idea what it took to become one of those guys. I'd actually heard some stuff in the news around that time where that agency was looking to start hiring more African Americans to come and work for them. And so, I was in high school still, and I just charted a course that that's what I want to aspire to do, and I went off to. Well, first off, my parents were both a product of historically black colleges in Mississippi, Jackson State University. And my dad was sort of always adamant that that's where I would go to school. So I did that. It just kind of wasn't, it sort of wasn't for me because I really wanted this forestry thing. And so I inevitably made my way to Mississippi State after attending both Jackson State and Alcorn State. And you know, I uh, I went off after college. I worked for the U.S. Forest Service for a time. I worked for a couple of state agencies, and I was working with the Forest Service in northwestern Pennsylvania, and I really wanted to get back home. My mom was kind of getting older and having some health issues, and so I just had to sort of find out how I could make that work. And um, came back to the South to Mississippi on a temporary sort of thing, and decided that no matter what, I was not leaving again. And the Forest Service called one day and said, "Hey, it's time for you to go back to Pennsylvania." And I was like, "Yeah, no," which actually was a very fateful decision because I left the Forest Service. Everything was cool. I just decided I wanted to do something else, and I just kind of piddled around for a while, and I heard about this work, working with African American forest landowners, this sort of new thing that was happening um, with these nonprofit organizations, and I just said, they're looking for a forester. I'm gonna apply, and I did. I got the job, and I worked with a bunch of farmers and landowners for about 3.5 years. And that was sort of, kind of the framework, man, that I would build the rest of my life on, at least until this point, where, um, I got to connect with a lot of people that looked like my parents and grandparents. And, these were people who had a very, very hearty relationship with the land that they had grown up on and lived on their entire lives. And I saw a lot of similarities between my own story and this issue of heirs property, which is so prevalent in African American families across the South, and is actually a really huge issue when you talk about conservation and the positive habitat things that we could do across the landscape.
All right, hold on 1 second here. So I want to put a pin in that for just a second.
Mhm.
I actually want to go back a little bit. So explain what a forester does.
Okay, sure.
Explain, if you would, when you talk about land management,
Mm-hmm.
what that means, and then I think that'll lead us into the heirs property conversation.
Yeah. So foresters do a lot of different things, man. I mean, generally, I think what most people see is that we manage the forest or we sort of protect the forest. But
I mean, we're talking about stuff like, prescriptive thinning of trees, removal of invasives.
Right.
I mean, I used to
prescribed burning.
I used to do prescribed burning a little bit.
Timber inventories, timber sales, timber management, if you will. All these sort of very technical things when it comes to the health of a forest or the long-term well-being of a forest, right?
But it's all kind of like very the implementation of it is very kind of like rudimentary, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like when we were burning timber, I mean, it was like me and a couple other guys on four-wheelers with drip torches, and we'd torch the downwind side.
Yeah.
We'd have like a big bulldozer line cut around something. We'd torch the downwind side and burn that back 20 or 30 yards, right? And then this dude in this little erector set helicopter
Drop a couple of the balls.
He would start dropping those ping pong balls that were on fire, just like torching the whole thing. Yeah. And then we just rode the edges, breathing smoke and putting out fires when they jumped the lines. Or like running a chainsaw or hacking and squirting, just like scarring up a tree, like a cedar or something with a hatchet, and then spraying herbicide in it. So you're kind of the person like that's creating these plans that need to be implemented, and then I mean, have you done a bunch of like burning and
oh my gosh,
timber clearing
I still
stuff?
do a lot of that today, even though I'm sort of I'm more of kind of management level type, but I definitely love to get my hands dirty, man. I can't do too much time behind anybody's computer, and inside. I'm an outside type of person, and so I make it a point to inject myself in all of that as much as I can, right? So prescribed burning is something I am very passionate about doing, and I love to do because it is the really important, necessary habitat work that animals need, right? That wildlife needs, and so to me, it's all sort of this. So when you think about this, you think about a forest, and forests in the South, as well as forests in many other places, evolved with fire, right? And when there is fire, routinely we tend to have healthier forests. And so the act of getting into the real sort of I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I love to take part in a forest being healthy for many years to come. And as long as I'm getting rid of invasive species or doing prescribed burning or, marking a forested stand for thinning or, all of those sorts of things, then I am, I can really see and feel in a very real way the work that I am helping to contribute to having healthy forests for a long time to come. And so
like having healthy forests, what we're talking about too is, so in your mind, is a healthy forest are you trying to create forests that look like they did, pre-European colonization?
As much as possible, yes.
So like in Arkansas, we have like the predominant pine species now is the loblolly, right? It's fast growing. I think it's got like a 15-year turnover or something
A little bit more than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, man,
Yeah.
I know enough to be dangerous.
There
Right?
you go. Yeah.
But as opposed to like the native pine,
Right.
that's and now I'm blanking on what the native pine would
Well,
be.
loblolly was probably pretty native here too, but yeah, the thing is we we plant them for for timber harvest, right? But it has loblolly has always been native in one way or another to the landscape of the American
What is
Southeast.
it? But am I incorrect in that? I thought Arkansas was predominantly a different species of pine before. It was like a slower growing. It's this pine. It's the pine that
Is
these
it
these
longleaf?
yes, longleaf.
Longleaf,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
longleaf pines.
Yeah.
But I did some work down towards Monticello, and it was these kind of pine savanna type situations, and we were doing invasive removal, and I remember they had these big tall pine trees that were like rung with metal,
Yeah.
and it's because it was like a stand where there were cockaded woodpeckers. It's like this very rare species.
Red cockaded woodpecker, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So like we see lots of pileateds
Right.
and was it pileateds and like redhead woodpecker and but so the cockaded is like, is it endangered officially?
It was at one time. I don't think it is currently. I'd have to look and see. I don't. I tend to not keep up.
It's on that. It's on that. Concern thing.
It's been threatened or concerned here most recently in most states, but there's been an effort on the part of a lot of people to ensure that its habitat and that the bird species is in good health across the Southeast. Yeah.
And so the reason I'm kind of focusing on this, it's not just to interject my little bits of knowledge. It's because we're talking about land stewardship and this lineage of land stewardship in the Southeast, black agrarian connection to that, and how you're entering that equation. That's kind of what I want folks to have, like kind of a general understanding of some of what you're doing.
Right.
And then I think that we can kind of thread that tapestry together a little bit more to see like where we came from and what you're doing and how you're kind of pushing it forward.
Yeah. So, so this narrative of African American land ownership in the American South is very complicated, and part of that is, history that is unfortunate and very complicated, and what I'm doing today is literally trying to undo as much of that as I possibly can. Okay, I'm trying to help families realize that their land provides opportunities for long-term wealth for future generations, and that it also provides a place for families to reconnect and to have a sense of grounding that is important to absolutely all humans on this planet, but particularly when you talk about African Americans in the rural South that have had such a complicated relationship with the landscape that we know here. So, so I'm just really trying to do, I suppose, in a very minute way, as much as I can in terms of carrying the mantle of what a forester does in terms of leaving a place a little bit better than you found it. And also, I suppose, I guess a lot of what I'm doing is, and I always pause because people so easily misunderstand you, unfortunately, in today's time. But a lot of work that I'm trying to do is, I guess, social justice work, where a lot of these families, landowners, and whatnot left the rural South, and we can look at the narrative of the Great Migration, right, out of the American South to the northern centers and the Midwest and the far west, United States. And so,
Right. So, hey, so we're talking about stuff that we both are pretty intimately familiar with.
yeah,
But
yeah,
let's just give a little bit of a primer to that. The Great Migration is probably over the span of 30 years or so, beginning in the early 1900s and running, probably even through World War II. But essentially, you're talking about black people who, up until that point, black people in America had very much been concentrated in the South, in rural areas.
Right.
That's a direct legacy of enslavement, and because because like the racialized violence of like the 20s was like some of like the most brutal stuff that the American South had ever seen, like even more brutal in some cases than slavery, because in slavery you had an entire system to maintain that power structure. Right. It was in flux in the 20s, and so that's like the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and stuff. Anyway, what we're talking about is black people and families leaving Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and going to, like, and this is what happened to my family, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Chicago. If folks were coming from, and they were following the railroads,
right,
and if folks were coming like from further east, if they were coming from the Carolinas, Florida, Alabama, that's how you start getting these black populations, large black populations in the northern centers of Baltimore and New York and stuff. And then like black families that move to the West Coast, California, they're coming pretty much out of Louisiana, Texas and Arkansas, because the railroads went that way.
Right.
So you've got this great migration, and you have this kind of strange flux of a people who are almost entirely Southern and entirely rural, and they're moving into places, one, where they can escape some of this violence, but also have access to jobs
and opportunities.
That don't require just working class jobs. So going from like working in a farm to working in a factory. Like it didn't take a tremendous amount of education, but you could support a family, get an automobile, start to move up. Yeah. So anyway, that's the Great Migration.
Great. Yeah. Wonderful descriptive narrative there. So yeah. So for a time after Reconstructions, African Americans were estimated to own somewhere around 15 million acres. And today,
mostly in the South.
Right. Mostly in the South. And today it's less than 2 million. And there are a number of factors that contributed to that largely, but that violence that you mentioned, because there was a lot of political violence during around the period of Reconstruction, and a lot of people fled as a result of that, and there was a lot of land left behind, and consequently, there's been a lot of lands left without opportunities for conservation to take place. And I am a person who is very passionate about conservation because I grew up a hunter, and I grew up somebody who just loved to go out and see wildlife, right? And so a really huge part of what I'm trying to do today is just trying to make a contribution in this sort of, I suppose a lot of people would see it as a unique way, but I don't necessarily see it as that, because this is what consulting foresters, meaning people who work privately within communities all across the United States, have done for at least 100 years. But the reality is that within African American communities and and families and so forth, there is still a lot of lack of information in terms of what is a forester. Okay, what is a consulting forester, and what do they do differently than say somebody who works for the state agency or somebody who works for the federal agency? And how can they help me? How can I use this land to create more wildlife habitat and have a hunting lease and have all these sort of really important opportunities that matter to all of us, not just to a specific community, but having a healthy forested landscape is important to an entire community, to an entire state, to an entire region, right? And so, I'm just in many ways trying to make my impact 1 acre at a time. You know,
now, are we dealing? So, are you dealing with folks that have like huge swaths of land? Are we talking hundreds and thousands of acres? Are we talking about people that have, a 40-acre plot that's divided between 10 relatives?
Right. It varies. It varies. I do have clients that have 1,000 acres and some more than that, and I do have some that are 15 or 20 acres here and there. And when you get into this complicated legal issue of heirs property, now let me try to explain this.
Please.
What happens is someone perhaps 3 generations ago passed away and they didn't leave a will. And so that leaves property in this sort of very complicated legal limbo of who actually owns it. And so now, envision that you've had 3 or 4 generations of people who have also successively passed away and also did not leave a will. So today you may have, for instance, 30 acres, you may have 70 people who have some rightful claim to this property or own some share of it, right? And
because it went from like great grandma and grandpa to their kids and then their kids and then their kids.
Exactly. And so it makes it very complicated to implement conservation on an acreage like that because let's be honest, my brother's sitting over there and I can tell you that we pretty much don't agree on a lot of different stuff, and we're 2 people. But if you got 20,
sure,
it's going to make it much more complicated, right? And
do like all those people have to sign off?
Yeah, they have to all be an agreeable part of the direction of where that property goes.
Yeah.
And things get really complicated real fast. And the thing that I am most hopeful about and makes me really excited is the recognition on the part of families that conservation is a viable tool to help them maintain control of their lands and to forge a future ahead for generations to come.
What does that mean specifically?
So that means that managing that land in terms of a working forest or in terms of healthy wildlife habitat, or a farm that a cattle farm that has some sort of mix of those things, of a healthy woodlot or something of that nature. I mean, again, man, 1 acre at a time, we start to do something and create a sort of mosaic across the landscape that helps improve wildlife populations, and so, or at least their habitat rather. And so I'm very hopeful because, in a way, you can sort of see this revival, right? You see this sort of resurgence of opportunities that many African American families have felt that they didn't necessarily, or previous generations didn't have access to the opportunities to help manage their farms, or they could and this of course is long gone as of now, but in the past, African American families, and this is of course is very well documented, but African American families were discriminated against in terms of one very key pivotal thing, and that was working with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and getting funds to improve their farms and and their woodlots and all this sort of thing. Well, that work that I did to sort of bring me to today was instrumental in partnering with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to help address this historical perspective that has been dismantled in many ways, right? And so where there may have been discriminatory things that took place many years ago, things have largely changed. And so a lot of the work that I did was helping to highlight what those changes look like and where the opportunities were. And, the biggest barrier became the issue of heirs property and explaining to landowners, hey, without this, if you're able to resolve this complicated legal situation, here are opportunities that you can take part in with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And you see this narrative on the part of families who say, my granddad, he couldn't have done that, or he didn't get that opportunity that we now have, right? And that is, I can't even tell you like how much that energizes me, when that light bulb goes off and people are sort of realizing that they can very much continue what was the hope of families and family members generations prior. So when they realize that they can now leave a lasting legacy that connects rather directly to the hopes of previous generations, I mean that's a pretty powerful thing, and I hope that makes sense. Is that
No, I get it, man.
Yeah, that is that's just work that energizes me, man. I'm just a guy who grew up on a farm and who loved it and grew up hunting and fishing and all these other things, and I wanted to get a forestry degree because I just wanted to be outside all the time.
Yeah,
and I had no idea at that time that the place where I find myself now is a result of even the lived experiences that I had, where my own family have issues with this heirs property thing. And to sort of witness firsthand, how that has created so much chaos, and so it's kind of a real sort of full circle sort of thing that has happened, and I'm really I'm energized just to be able to try and sort of make a positive contribution in some way. But in the midst of it, I get to get my hands dirty and I get to play outside and I get to make management level recommendations and oversee those things and follow through with those things, and I try to get in as much hunting as I can where I can in the middle of that.
Perfect segue, man.
Yeah.
Because something that we've talked about before, just in our own private conversations, is, and I think a lot of folks, I just think it's a subject that's worth broaching, is some of these, like traditional black, like, I don't know what you call them, outdoors activities, methods and manners of hunting. And so I think a lot of folks, I think black people aren't as visible, specifically on public land, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I think there's, especially in the South, I think that, a lot of black folks have this kind of living memory, and by that I mean, you've a story from about your grandma's brother or something back in the day, where like violence was perpetrated against them in these rural, wild places. Right. So there's kind of like a suspicion there, or they've just been told their whole life it's dangerous. Simultaneously, now you have that, you have the results of people that have, maybe become more urbanized and they just have less of they're a generation or two removed from these rural and wild places. Like my dad, when he was growing up, my dad was born in the 40s. So my dad grew up during the summers. He would go back to Mississippi and like stay with his great aunt, who was essentially like his grandmother. And so he had that relationship, but you get like some kid born and, I didn't even know my family was from Arkansas until after I moved back down here to go to college. I just ended up in Arkansas, right? Wow. Okay. So you've got that kind of disconnect. You've got that barrier to entry is a term we hear a lot. But you have that all rolling around with an unbroken chain of black hunters and black, specifically like houndsmen and bird hunters. And, when I think of black hunters, I think of the South. I think deer hunting. I think fishing. And I'd say fishing. I'd say fishing for panfish and catfish, rough fish. So like buffalo is what I'm thinking specifically, and I'm thinking small game. So I'm thinking about squirrel hunting. I'm thinking about raccoons. I'm thinking about quail, right? Specifically, especially if we get further east from where we're at now, where you have those traditions of like, different habitat, those big pine plantations and stuff. So this is stuff that you and your brother and your family, like you were just the latest generation that was continuing those practices in a place where your family and people that looked like you had been doing it for hundreds of years.
Yeah. So you just said something that, and I've been sitting here thinking just a second ago. You said when you think of black hunters. So the thing for me is, when I think of hunters, period, I mean, for a huge chunk of my life, I lived in, largely African American communities where that's pretty much the only people that were there, right? And so, when I think of outdoors people,
you think of black people.
I think of black people, because that's largely been my experience, right? And so
that's kind of that's a great way to expound on the point that I'm making, is that you grew up with it so normalized that your idea of an outdoorsman or a woodsman is a black,
of
a
course,
black man, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think,
or woman, let's say woman too.
Sure. And there is a huge tradition, especially with black women in the South, of herbalism.
Yes, of course.
And and that ties in with lack of access to medical care, midwifery, all this stuff. Yeah. And I'm not enough of an expert to really delve into that, but I mean, these are deeply rooted beliefs.
Our great grandmother was an herbalist, to my understanding. I've always been told.
And that's everything from like ginseng to like red clay.
Oh my gosh, our family supposedly, am I right? They used to eat red clay or something like that. But anyway,
I saw a 60 Minutes thing like when I was a kid.
Yeah, man.
And that being and we're talking about like red clay, and it's like Mississippi, Alabama.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my mom. I wish my mom was sitting here, because she could go on and on about this red clay thing. And her family, I've just heard that they ate clay. I don't know the specifics about it.
And it's supposed to be like a way to get minerals.
It was
and
healthy.
Like vitamins.
That's right. Yeah.
But anyway, so we hear about this all the time. This is great, man. Okay. Because we hear about this all the time. Especially right now, you get these R3 initiatives inside of hunting, and that's like retention, recruitment, and like reinvigoration, I think, or re-engagement. And largely the narrative around black people is, and I frankly, I find it paternalistic.
It is, yeah.
Oftentimes it's like, it's white people that are going to introduce or share the resource of the outdoors with black people who just, because that's like, that shows you that, like, societally we've accepted this narrative that, like, these are things that black people don't do. Right?
Yeah.
And so what I love about this and, like, meeting you and, like, I made this kind of semicircle in my family and came back to something I didn't even know had been part of my history.
Right.
Is that you're just like kind of the latest part of this, fairly unbroken stream of this.
And I hope, man, I was thinking on the drive up today, like, about my 7-year-old daughter who, but when I was 7, I had totally different experiences because I was raised very rural.
Were you like running around with a 22 and a pocket full of shells?
I tell people that now. Most people get really frightened by this, but I mean, I can remember some of the very earliest memories that I have, and I'm sure I was maybe 5 or 6 or something. And there would be, a shotgun behind the door, and somebody'd say, "Alex, go bring me that shotgun." And that was my job, is to go grab the shotgun and take it to the ad dog.
Yeah.
From a very, very young age. I can remember, again, some of the earliest memories that I have, man, are, my dad and uncles and extended family members working on our farm, working the cows and out in the gardens and, fishing and hunting. Like, these are, I mean, again, this is just what I know. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. Yes, it's oftentimes very challenging for me when I have conversations with people about my being in the outdoors as much or my experiences thereof, because it is sort of this very paternalistic narrative of how neat is that? You mean you are, and I mean,
and look, paternalistic, often well-meaning.
Yes,
often
of course,
with good intentions.
Yes,
but still,
but not necessarily aware that that thing you just said, or the way you just said this thing, or that may actually sting. You know what I mean? Or it may be problematic, and so. Yeah, man. So back in the 80s, our dad, and I can't remember, my brother might know the year, but my dad joined a hunting club in the Mississippi Hill Country, and it was like a really vast piece of property. Like they hunted thousands of acres where the hills flattened out into the delta, and so they kind of hunted both, right? And to this day, it's some of the best hunting land I would in the U.S. I would say.
Hold on, man. Where's something's rubbing?
Is it? Can you hear it?
Yeah, I think we're just getting too animated, man.
Okay,
we got to bring it back. Yeah,
got it.
When you say hill country, how far from the Mississippi would that be? I'm talking about the river.
Yeah. So where that hunting club was, I'd say maybe 60 miles, maybe 50, 60 miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everything between kind of when that started in the Mississippi River is going to be delta, which is like the inverse of my delta here in Arkansas.
Right.
Gotcha.
So, that hunting club, man, and that opportunity that my brother and I had to sort of, go out there and kind of grow up hunting on that place. What made that different than where our family was from is that the game was just a little bit better there. You know what I mean? So we grew up in South Hinds County, which is like sort of the Pine Hills, which is, Now I'd say, the game is a little bit better because there's a lot of deer. There's a lot of, you get a few ducks off the Pearl River. You get, some others, a lot of small game. But, up in the hill country, there were just deer, lots of deer, and lots of ducks, and lots more turkeys, and quail.
And these are all different kinds of critters that you grew up going after.
Oh man, yeah. So I would say, my foray was probably first was rabbit hunting. When I was pretty young, they let me hunt with a hickory stick.
Just like throwing it?
Yeah, throwing it at the range.
Yeah, which is a kind of surprisingly effective way.
It is very, very, very effective. So then, deer, because deer were kind of a big thing. But our dad has always been kind of like a small game hunter,
Was it behind dogs?
Yeah, they had beagles,
Mm-hmm.
And my dad also loved to hunt raccoon and possum and a couple other things. But
and I've talked about this before, but specifically with those two animals,
mm-hmm.
nocturnal animals,
right.
There is a huge and really very noble history.
Yes.
Traced all the way back hundreds of years through enslavement,
mm-hmm.
with people in bondage. Hunting those animals, and largely because they hunted to supplement the larder
mm-hmm.
After working full days on
right.
These
right. plantations
or whatever there were slaves in all sorts of industries, and it wasn't just plantations,
right.
but and this was a way that it could be beneficial to the slave owners because it lessened their financial responsibility to provide food, but it simultaneously was often this kind of like taste of quote unquote freedom, a place to just to how do I want to say this, to kind of experience expertise in something. And, oftentimes, on some of these plantations, that had kind of a sporting hunting culture, like the houndsmen and the houndskeeper were enslaved people. They were the hunting guides. But anyway, so when we're talking about raccoons and possums, nowadays we associate both of those animals with like roadkill and eating garbage. But these are native species, super fascinating, especially if you get into like a possum and like it being the only North American marsupial, how many ticks it eats, all this stuff. But it was also a source of sustenance, like both belly filling and soul filling way for hundreds of years. Right. And then you grow up seeing your father have this relationship with that as well, which is, when we're talking about this kind of reemergence or reimagining of a black association with this agrarian lifestyle. Again, I'm so struck by the fact that, and in some ways envious of the fact that you're not having to be brought back to it, that you were raised in it.
Yeah.
And so again, sorry, I'm going off of these tangents.
No, I get it.
You grow up doing that.
I feel very fortunate, I feel I feel so very fortunate that I am as connected in that way, 2 generations past. And you actually, a conversation we had recently helped me to realize something else that I had never really thought about. We were talking about barbecue. Yeah. And I think I showed you a picture of our dad's old, pit that he built. And we were talking about it being direct heat, and
we could do this the same thing with possums. We could do the same thing with direct heat barbecue and these pits and these pit masters.
Because growing up, man, that's all that we knew. I didn't realize. The thing is, man, I really didn't see smoke, or somebody being more intentional about cooking with smoke until, man, I had to be like 17 or so.
Yeah.
17, 18 maybe.
And you know what, man? You're talking about a cooking method that is incredibly physical. At its most base, it's digging a hole, a pit in the ground, right?
Which I've seen our family do that.
Yeah, make a fire.
Up until maybe about 10 years ago, they would
dig a pit
and put a hog in there.
Yeah, create your own charcoal by burning wood down. So where you're from, what wood would be used?
They use a lot of oak.
Yeah.
Post oak or no, probably red oak, white oak. You know what I mean? They used a ton. Mostly.
So they're using oak, and then you're doing a hog over those coals, which is going to do a couple of things. One, when done for a long, slow time, it'll take you from having this kind of gummy consistency to the skin to this really crispy, kind of like glass shatteringly crispy skin that can either be, and different places do it differently, but some people like pull it off, chop it up, mix it back in the meat. Some places will take it off, eat it as a side. Some places will put it back on a sandwich or something. What's also really cool about that direct heat method is that it's the fat dripping off of that pig is hitting those coals and vaporizing, and it's imbuing a specific flavor that's very different than like the offset smoke.
Yeah.
But again, so I went on a tangent. But but we're talking about these relationships with the woods and the earth, and I mean we can be kind of precious about it and talk about it that way. But like that's something I saw with my father is like my dad was a school teacher, but because of where he came from, like the way that my father showed love was like physically working in the yard, whatever. And
so our dad was a school teacher as well.
I didn't. What did he teach?
Yeah, he was a shop teacher, so industrial. They call it industrial technology.
Awesome, man.
So he could build anything.
Yeah.
And he loved to work with his hands. I was told by him that our grandfather was much the same way, and our great grandfather was what was called a Gandhi dancer. And that was, he worked on the railroad.
Okay.
Right? He was one of those guys that used to move and lay track. He was a really big man. I've only seen photos of him. He died, I think, 2 years before I was born. But
John Henry.
He was a huge, massive man. I'm sure my brother probably knew him, but I didn't. I didn't get a chance to know him. And, so there, So, we could, I think, go on and on and on and on about, that, the connection to, sort of, working outdoors in that way. But so our dad built this, this pit, and, he did not, I mean, I'm pretty sure that, he probably, never envisioned, cooking with, smoke in that way. I mean, they did create coals by burning wood, but they just didn't necessarily use as much smoke in in that intentional way. And so, but yeah, man, I mean, so you helped me. So get back to my point. You helped me sort of realize, all of these experiences that I had, coming of age and growing up, and things that I didn't necessarily realize were really sort of important, intrinsic contributions that African American culture offered the world by and large. Like, okay, so Holmes County, Mississippi, place does not get enough credit. But when I was growing up, and so when I was growing up, there was a blues man that I would see often, all the time. Turns out he was to this day, is a really important blues man because he's one of the last of the old school blues artists. His name was Lonnie Pitchford. Okay. Also in Holmes County, the burial site of a guy named Elmore James. Okay. Elmore James was what many people refer to him as the king of the slide guitar, right? And that's this style that really sort of revamped rock and roll music. I was told when we were growing up that B.B. King actually lived in Lexington, Mississippi, where we grew up, and that many others, sort of that this was kind of a hub of the hill country and the Delta, and
I'm trying to think who else, like R.L. Burnside. He's hill country.
R.L. Burnside's hill country, man.
Yeah.
So that's the North Hill country up in that whole, like, man, don't get me talking about that, but that Oath of Turner and the fife and drum tradition, that music is just so important to me.
See, we're sitting here, man. We're sitting probably five houses that way would be Louis Jordan's house.
Man, I grew up listening to that.
Dude, that's where and they tore
Are
the
you
house.
serious?
They tore the house down. I'll show it to you.
Wow.
If you go up the road here and you bust a left on
Yes.
17, that's the Rosetta Tharpe Highway.
I will never forget that our grandmother had a cassette tape that had Louis Jordan, and I stole her cassette at an early age and would listen to that thing over and over and over and over again because I loved it, man.
Yeah, he had bangers, man.
Yeah, man.
Beans and cornbread.
He was,
My kids sing
man.
that.
Yes, man. Yes. So, awesome. That's awesome, man. So yeah, I feel very fortunate. Even now, I mean, I could point out probably 5 or 6 people whom I could say, man, I know this person, and you should talk to them because their experience was really fascinating. They grew up here and they did it. I would say that I don't see my brother and I's experiences necessarily being unique from people that we know. Mm-hmm. So I remember once I was pretty young, but I was with my dad, and we were near Thornton, Mississippi, which is also in the Delta, but it's kind of closer over to the hill country, in that area. And our dad loved to fish over there, and I was very young, and I saw some guys out in a creek. And I was just like, I had no idea what they were doing. I said, what are they doing? I asked my dad, why are they out there in that water like that, right? And he said they're hand grabbing, and I had no idea what he was talking about.
Describe it.
Right. So these were African American men, and they were swimming around in this creek searching for catfish to grab with their hands to bring them out of the water and to throw them in their cooler, right?
Are they just is it like noodling or
noodling? That's exactly what it is. But the fascinating thing, and I remember conversations with my dad where he insisted that this was something that was very prevalent among African Americans at a time. I can't necessarily say that I saw a lot of that. I think I maybe witnessed it a few times, and then
you're talking about hand grabbing.
Hand grabbing, yeah. And then back, when I got to college at Mississippi State, I met a bunch of guys who did it, and so, but I do remember a handful of times where there were African American men who I saw in waters throughout the Delta or the hills or somewhere, and they were they were hand grabbing for catfish, and I've had numerous conversations with a few people that were sort of my dad's generation where they all sort of echoed that this was very common among African Americans at a time, and
this was like a subsistence level activity.
Yes, absolutely. They went out and they hand grabbed catfish to feed their families, and
which, I mean, if you think about that, man, that's perhaps like one of the most human activities you could engage in, like just going out with your wit in your hands and like literally pulling food out of the wild.
I think that's one of the wildest things to this day. I mean, I tried it maybe once or twice while in college. I was a little younger and a little crazier back then, and man, I think a lot of people don't realize how how ballsy that is, right? Can I say ballsy?
You can say ballsy. Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people don't realize how ballsy that is.
Get a hold of a snapping turtle.
Yes,
man.
of course. You can get your hand snapped off, or you can run into a poisonous snake, or you can step on something. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that could happen to you. You can alligators, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a whole lot of things could happen. So, yeah, man, hand grabbing is really badass, man. You know, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, that dude, he angry. You gotta leave
that's a real one.
Yeah, you gotta leave him alone. You know, so yeah, man.
Well, hey, let me steer the ship a little bit here if I can, because we've been talking for an hour.
Oh crap! Okay, what time? Okay.
And I know you've got to get on the road because you and your brother, like you said, I don't know if I said it or not, but you guys are on your way to Nebraska to mule deer hunt.
Yes.
And then I'll be, 9:30. I'll be waking up in 5 hours to go specklebelly hunting again.
Okay.
So, and so obviously, man, we'll have to do this again because we've just been going off on these tangents, and and I love it because it's like you get excited about something and you're talking about this, and I think that someone listening to this could see the common thread through everything we're talking about. But you know, it's kind of like a concluding question. And this steps back from, or maybe it doesn't step back from some of this conversation we've been having about like the historical relevancy of the past and how it interacts with the present and such. But you know, I think that the more I do these interviews, the more I talk to people, I've really kind of figured out that what this podcast is really ultimately supposed to be is an examination of craft. You know, and I would say that craft to me is that intersection of thoughtfulness and working with your hands, and it can be in different sides of the pendulum swing, but I feel like that's what craft is. It involves that tactile nature of stuff. So
I feel like it could be just how you live, man. You know, like if you're somebody who lives close to a specific thing, particularly living with a relationship close to the land, right, and to the natural world, that I feel like it takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of patience and persistence and, you know, all those things. And I feel like the people who are good at that definitely practice a craft.
Yeah, you know, and so I think you might have actually just answered the question. I was going to ask you where you see the manifestation of craft in your life.
Yeah. Man, yeah, that's a good question. So I would have to say, I'd have to say currently it's my mother. It's my mom, because my dad was a very tough guy, right? But my mom had him beat and still does. The most resilient person that I've ever known. And a person that just can make up in her mind that she wants to do something and nothing's going to stop her from doing that thing, you know? And, you know, I'll never forget. I don't even know if my brother actually knows this story, but I think I was 8 years old. We had cows by this time. Several years prior to that, my dad had a herd of 60 to 80 cows that were they were mostly killed in a lightning strike.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so one it was raining real hard. One group got hit, lightning bounced off, hit the other group, and my dad lost the majority of his herd. And so
and then had to figure out what to do.
Had to try to rebuild
30,000 pounds of dead cows.
Right. So I'll never forget, it was a Saturday. The cows that we did have had somehow gotten out of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, again, one of the toughest people I've ever met, like, period. She took it upon herself. I think my dad was somewhere hunting or something. I don't know where he was. It was a Saturday. And the cows had gotten out. My mom decided that she was going to go get these cows in. Why she decided on this, I have no idea. And I was 8. There was somebody else. The cows had gotten on somebody else's property. And they were hunting on this property that we were on. And there were dogs barking. And we could hear the hounds. And my mom was the most resilient. Like, I knew she was afraid. I knew she was but she just.
Were they running deer dogs?
I'm pretty sure they were. Yeah. And, yeah. My mom just kind of, she got in her mind that she was going to go do it. I can't remember if we did. I'm pretty sure we got them in, you know. But I would say craft for her, because craft in her, you know, by my definition and looking at her, it's the act of resilience. It's of a person that can make up in her mind that she wants to do something, and she's just gonna do it, you know. And I think if you're gonna be decent at anything in this life, whether it's something that somebody celebrates you for, or something that you die and nobody even knows that you lived, most of us exhibit some sort of craft, even if it's that we get up every day and we religiously not do anything, right? But I can say that my mom has been a person who has lived the hell out of focusing straightforward and getting something done, no matter how small or how large. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.
No, man, that's a good place to end it, I think. Yeah, we'll have to do this again. We just
jumped all over the place.
Yeah, and we just touched on the surface of quite a few subjects. But so Alex Harvey of Legacy Land Management.
Yep.
If people wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way to do that?
Instagram, all one word, Legacy Land MGMT. They can follow me. They can follow my business page on Facebook, Legacy Land Management LLC. You can find me on LinkedIn, Alexius A. Harvey, Alexis, middle initial A, Harvey. Email, you could email me at it is aharvey@definemylegacy.com. aharvey@definemylegacy.com. Yep.
All right. Well, Alex, man, again, man, super glad that we finally got to meet each other in person.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, likewise, man. Likewise. We could do this for hours and hours more, but yeah, we can't.
Absolutely. But yeah, man, look, safe travels.
Thank you, man.
And yeah, excited to see what else going on with you down the line.
Yeah, man. Likewise. I hope we link up many more times and hunt and hang out and everything else, man.
Yep, it'll happen, man.
Yep.
All right, thanks a bunch.
Thank you, brother.
Hey folks, thanks for listening to this episode of the Black Duck Revival podcast. As always, a subscription and a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to is tremendously helpful. This podcast is produced by Jonathan Wilkins and Brian Sachs, and the title music is provided by Dr. Bionic, a fantastic band out of Cincinnati, Ohio. If you're interested in coming down to Arkansas, we've still got a few spots left on a couple of hunts left this waterfowl season. You can find more information about that at blackduckrevival.com, or you can keep up with me and follow what I'm doing by following on Instagram, just at Black Duck Revival. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.